All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome back to our Thursday Tech Talk. Today we have Steve Buchanan with us. Please remember to keep your mic muted and send me any questions in the chat box. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to Dr. Wolf.
Well, good morning, Lindsay. Well, hello, Steve. How are you doing today?
Hey, Dr. Wolf. Good. Thanks for having me on here.
Hey, it's always a joy and a pleasure. I think we've had so many great interactions over the past. You've come out and volunteered for the Minnesota STEM Partnership. You're always available. You know, you do a whole lot in the community. And so it's also very important for our high school students to know that, hey, there's real people out in the community that live in the community, that live in the Twin Cities area, metro area, that came from, our humble beginnings and understand, that high school experience and understood the struggle, I think maybe a young person might say. So, it's hard, I think, as an older adult for me to really look back and see, like, how can we help the youth? But because I'm not in that generation anymore, and sometimes we do forget, and our whole lifestyle is different. I grew up in a completely different technical world than the students here today. Like, I think my highest end of technology was having like a one of those CD players, and I can't remember what it's called. And then the beta VHS, type videotapes and all that. They don't even use tapes anymore. It's all digital. So without any further ado, Steve, you are the Director of Cloud Computing, and we are pleased to have you here. You represent a high-tech end of the spectrum. You represent infrastructure, and you have a career in this. You've been doing this for quite a while, and so I want to impress upon the students is to pay attention and look to see, hey, this guy is making big moves and doing big things that impact the type of work that they're involved with. And so, Steve, just to kind of lead into this a little bit, is we want to have a conversation where the students will be able to relate to, like, oh, that's why I'm learning coding, or oh, that's why I'm learning robotics, or oh, that's why I'm learning to fly a drone. And then, the term cloud always gets just thrown out there. It used to be really squishy. I mean, 4 or 5 years ago, you could just throw a conference and everybody shows up at a cloud conference. Now it's taken shape. People are starting to understand it, but there is a discipline and a pathway to that very high ranking type position. And so even though I know this is professional development, but I will just get that on the table. So tell us about your t-shirt.
Oh, so this t-shirt is one of the t-shirts from DevOps Days Minneapolis.
Nice.
It's a yearly event in July, and it's an awesome event. It's right here in the Twin Cities. I don't think we'll have it this year, but yeah, that's what this t-shirt is. So I love the event, great event, and you always get a cool t-shirt. Yeah. And if you'll notice, this is a building over by the U of M and the light rail here. So they always do a theme for the Twin Cities on the t-shirts.
Nice. So like DevOps, since we're going to just dive right into this, tell me about DevOps. What in general does DevOps mean?
Yeah, so DevOps is like just bringing the development and operations together, and it's really about a culture and doing things faster, and being able to produce faster, right? So like software, or like from my end, I do a lot of stuff with infrastructure and a lot of stuff with cloud. So being able to provision or make changes or work with containers to support the dev teams is really kind of the area I focus on.
Okay.
But Dr. Wolf, you said a couple of things at the beginning that I'd like to touch on that I think would be relevant to the students. So one of the things was just like how they can get into IT and why it's relevant to them, and why are they learning coding and things like that. We live in a digital world, right? And it's becoming even more digital. And with this whole COVID-19 thing, that's speeding that up, right? With everyone having to work from home, students having to do the e-learning, we're dependent on all these digital tools. Things like Zoom, things like Microsoft Teams have just exploded because of this. And I think this is going to have lasting impacts, and the world is going to speed up this digital transformation that we've already been in. Then you have other things, right? Like our entertainment now, Snapchat, TikTok, Facebook Live, all that stuff is digital, right? All these apps that students are using, right? Roblox, things like that. There's technology powering all of that stuff, right? When you think about that, there's a team behind all of that. There's servers or there's cloud where those things are running. So when you, as a student, are learning coding, that might be the doorway into, you know, being a part of a team in the future to support some of those things. Or if you like what TikTok does or Snapchat, and maybe you have an idea for an app, right, that you want to bring forward, learning coding and learning about technologies is a way to kind of get there, even if it's just understanding that. The other thing you touched on is the drones. And I know you do stuff with drones, right? And a lot of times it's hard to understand, okay, how would drones play into my job, to a job or a career in the future?
Mm-hmm.
Well, my wife, she actually works in IT, and she works for a construction company, and they actually have these very, very expensive drones, right? These drones are like $20K a piece. Sometimes they cost more. And there's actually a person in the IT department that has to have a pilot's license to fly these drones. These are not like drones that you can go to Best Buy and pick up and fly, right? These are like the real deal, like
octorotors. And
but this company has invested in these drones because of the technology in the drones, and someone has to be skilled to fly these drones, right? And it collects all this data. And so that's just an example of, again, technology, and something like drone, right? You can learn about drones and fly drones, and might be a hobby today. It might be part of your career tomorrow.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. And on that point, the other thing about the drones and the programs that we run is, you know, in the future, heading towards, you know, artificial intelligence or augmented reality, right? Some of the emerging and advancing, they've been around, but only the elite, if you will, the high-end technical people have. But as you said, you know, companies and the way our industry is evolving, we want students to be able to get an understanding of the first-person viewer, having to wear goggles, right? It's not just about gaming. It's about actually, look at the healthcare surgeon, right? Isn't there's plenty of, well, they're evolving into, and it's very complicated, but people could actually be in one city. They could be in Boston wearing a headset, goggles on a high-speed backbone, performing surgery on someone in South Africa, like literally taking control of the robots, right? So go ahead. Do you want to speak on that? Or
no, that's spot on. I mean, telemedicine is a real thing. And again, you know, I hate to keep going back to this, but COVID-19 is speeding that up. It's already been something that's been in the works, especially in like rural areas or countries where, you know, they don't have the infrastructure. Telemedicine, using robotics and using things like Microsoft Teams or using other technologies, right, for remote connectivity and being able to see back and forth, is becoming a real thing, and it's speeding up now. Going back to the drone thing too, I mean, a couple of other areas, you know, I know military, they use drones. I know recently I've seen roofing companies will use a drone to fly above your house and assess the condition of your roof. So you don't have to have a man or a woman get on the roof anymore and check out the roof.
Yeah.
They just fly a drone up there, right? So I mean, there's going to be all kinds of use cases, and then being able to take that data from those drones, push it up to, let's say, cloud, to some sort of analytics tooling, and analyze that data. There's a whole world out there with these tools that we have now, and it's shaping and transforming into jobs that don't even exist yet.
Yeah. And it's, you know, it's our job to give back, and that's one of the purposes of like the Minnesota STEM partnership, is to figure out a way to very equitably but very simplistically introduce these advanced and emerging topics. You know, one of our goals is to take and put the actual equipment in their hands. So like, you know, just to not to dwell on the drones or the robotics, but you know, you can give them a simple Lego EV3 Mindstorm brain type robotic. It's a lot of fun. The first organization has done a great job of wrapping around the competitions, but the fundamentals and the basics that they're learning about engineering is actually incredible. The
Right.
second piece of it, like for drones, like I said, using a first person viewer goggle, and then like coding, we'll have coding classes. But the whole concept, if you look at really the strategic vision of that, is a pathway towards artificial intelligence, augmented reality, whatever it may be. But when that student has the opportunity to reach high school, like the primary target for this audience, they will have the skills, or at least they'll have the concepts down. So like, oh, well, I heard Steve Buchanan talking about cloud, and I heard Dr. Wolf talking about infrastructure, and Lindsay was out there doing coding. So maybe I should do something in cloud, or maybe pursue, you know, a degree in computer science or technology of something, or engineering. And so, you know, you're very insightful on what those things are. We approach it from, if you will, the bottom up, because there's a lot of missed opportunities, and our young students don't get a chance to get these early opportunities, like maybe more um, well-to-do. I hate to say well-to-do. I hate to say privileged, but you know, there's people that have the means and they work in IT and they just throw leftover parts to their kids, and you know, kids figure it out. Where our kids are, you know, I'm tired of us being thrown a basketball and some shorts and say, go, this is your career, go be Michael Jordan, right? But LeBron James, let me upgrade that, right? Or whoever is current. So, Steve, on about you is, you know, we just got done going over all the high tech stuff, and our audience really, you know, we talked about drones, but let's guide it towards what things that a student in high school could do, or even a younger, but you know, a student in high school that's coming out, you know, either as a, you know, 11th, 10th or 11th grader, knowing when they come out, hey, there's this whole brave new world out there. I got to make decisions on education. I got to maybe make decisions on living arrangements, and then, you know, maybe jump into the workforce. And so can you share a little bit about your early upbringing, and in the context of the perspective of like advice for a high school student?
Yeah, great topic. So the first thing is, back when I was in school, like high school, like coding wasn't, I mean, those classes weren't offered in school. I've even heard now that like some schools will have like Cisco classes and different classes like that that you can take in high school, or animation classes.
Mm-hmm.
So you can get exposure to technology while you're in high school. They're even doing stuff in like middle school, and I highly recommend, if you're a student, take advantage of that. You are getting a leg up, you're getting a head start, and that stuff's going to be relevant regardless of what field you go into. Like if you go to college and you come out and you're in accounting, there's a chance in the future you may have to do some level of programming. Even if it's like low to no code programming, you may have to do some of that. So if you understand how that works, it's going to be helpful for you. While you're in school, if your school doesn't offer programs, you know, there's stuff that's free online, or you can do like BDPA or work with Dr. Wolf, but some stuff that's online is like Scratch. It's free. Anyone can sign up for it. One of my sons has actually been using it to, he's been creating video games in there, and these adventure games that are pretty elaborate, and he'll bring it to me and show it to me, and he's like, hey, you know, here's my game, and I'm in there trying to figure it out, and it's a whole world, right? You're exploring, and you gotta find this key to unlock this door to get to the end, and there's a boss you gotta fight and stuff. I mean, it's just like, it's amazing what he's been able to do, and he did that on his own. right? He picked that up. He started doing that. He's very interested in video games, like a lot of people are, and he started building his own. And that's just a stepping stone. Like he could take that to the next level, right? But what it's done is it's started to teach him fundamentals about development and programming. And then I was, talking with him about like, well, there's front end, there's back end, there's people like me. You would develop something and you would give that to a person like me. I'm going to run it on some servers. I'm going to make sure that, if you get millions of people on your game, that this thing is going to perform well. Because if your game is slow and it sucks and, it's always buffering, nobody's going to stick around and play it, right? So that gave me an opportunity to start to educate him a little bit on how things work and how what he's doing would play into a bigger picture. Now, as you're starting to get towards the end of high school and maybe even college, well, in college, there's a lot of opportunity to go into different areas of tech and learn different things. And then I would take advantage of that too. After college, there's a lot of companies that have programs that look for new college grads. Like the company I work for, Avanade, we hire college grads and we put them through a program where they learn more on the job, right? And then they're out in the field, they're doing consulting, they're working on exciting projects. There's a lot of companies that are doing that. You look at Microsoft, you look at Facebook, you look at Google, and the list goes on. And I'm sure even, local companies that we have, like I know Best Buy does things, Target, I'm sure has some stuff that they do as far as tech. And every company is digital, right? And every company is moving towards that. They're striving to become digital. That way they can compete with the future Ubers and the future Netflix companies of the world, right? So they need technical people. And if you start early, you can have a leg up. Now, you will have to put in some work. You'll have to put in some time and gain that experience. You may not come right out of college doing the most exciting thing or working on the most exciting thing, but just be patient and give it time and continue to apply yourself. And you'll work your way up towards, those exciting projects, or, you might start at one company, work there for a while, gain skills, and then later on you might land at the cool tech company.
Yeah, that's a whole lot, but you're absolutely right. That's definitely sets expectations. And I do see many of the students, like even with BDPA, a lot of the students believe that, the first thing they're going to do is make it to a Google and Amazon or YouTube, and those companies are hiring like crazy. But you have other companies like, Wells Fargo, Chase, JP Morgan Chase, Eli Lilly, right? Johnson and Johnson. You have a lot of major companies in this great nation of ours that are looking for students that have, they're along that beginning entry of the pathway, but also a passion for technology. And I think that's really kind of part of it too, is it can be a job, but it can also be a passion, right?
Right.
So
and a lot of those companies, like some of the companies you mentioned, right, they're actually doing high tech projects. They're doing cool projects, and you may not hear about them because, they're not broadcasting that to the world as they're going through their digital transformation.
Right.
They're doing stuff, right? They're doing some of the same stuff that some of these big tech companies are doing, or they may be using some of the tools that these big tech companies are producing.
Yeah.
Like if you think about Microsoft, you don't have to work at Microsoft to work with Microsoft's technology.
Right.
Just find a company that, they're a Microsoft shop and they're cutting edge and they have good leadership, right? And chances are you'll be working with the cutting edge stuff that Microsoft is putting out there in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think part of that too is setting the right expectation. there's just so many other companies out there doing it. But getting into a company that is actually, you know, progressive, if you will, ahead of the curve, or you might even have an older, stodgy, you know, perception of a company, but they're actually doing some pretty cool stuff. To
Right.
kind of key off, like you said, who is that next Uber app, right? Or
Right.
who is that next cool technology? So let me pivot a little bit just to take that, but instead of the companies, what do you think are the hottest industries? Like, if you know, if I am, and I've seen this, and this is the reason I'm bringing it up, is I've had a number of students say, hey, you know, I'm taking this beginning Python class, but I really want to be a nurse, or I really want to do whatever. And you know, my response to them is, well, do you realize how much technology is going to be there by the time you graduate in 4 to 6 to 8 years, right? So from an industry perspective, like healthcare, manufacturing, can you share maybe your opinion on the top 2 or 3 industries, with or without disclaimers? I know you're a consultant, so.
Yeah. So healthcare, of course,
Oh yeah.
it's booming. It's been a hot area. Um, I've worked at hospitals, and I've worked for, you know, I've been in some healthcare organizations, and you know, and I've seen some of the healthcare applications out there, like some of the EMRs, EHRs, and some of the other healthcare type applications. And a lot of the healthcare applications that are out there that are being used are old, right? They're legacy, like, you know, they're just old. And so there's this catch up right now where I think the healthcare industry is positioned to go through um, a transformation,
Mhm.
right? To get those things updated and get updated on some newer technology. So there's some of that, and then with the telehealth, the telemedicine, and stuff like that, and just, you know, that stuff's critical. And then, of course, in healthcare, security is top of mind. It has to be, right? So if you like security and you want to go down the security route, there's probably you know, healthcare is a good space because they need healthcare. They need security, right? In healthcare, it's critical. Manufacturing, there's cool stuff happening there. You know, when you talk about things like IoT, combining like robotics with, you know, some of the back end technology stuff that you could do. Finance is always cutting edge, and they seem to have, you know, sizable budgets to fund projects. So that's a good space to be in.
Yeah.
It's always a good thing if you're, you know, working in technology and there's some budget behind the stuff you're working on or the team you're on. Um, and then I think retail as well, and you know, like Amazon is crushing it, right? They're,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're crushing it.
Well,
But
Mr. Bezos is going to be what, the first trillionaire?
yeah,
Is that
it's
something I read? That's crazy.
yeah,
Trillionaire?
it's just ridiculous. But you know, when you think about that, okay, Amazon on the top right now, but are they going to be on the top tomorrow? You know,
Yeah.
look at the amazing things that Target's doing, right? I mean, for a while, people probably thought Target's not going to be around or might not be around. Best Buy maybe not be around, but they've been doing some really cool things with technology, and they're here and they're thriving and they're doing well. And it's, you know, thank goodness, because they're in our hometown, right?
Yeah.
But if you think about retail is changing too, and it's going through, you know, that digital transformation, and it's they're doing things, and newcomers, right? So retail needs technologists. They need technologists that can bring new ideas and that can come to the market and help compete with Amazon, you know, and other, I mean, there's so many industries and technologies needed everywhere. Logistics, we have a big logistics company here in Minnesota, and they're doing amazing things with technology. And, you know, they're trying to transform and just take it to the next level. And so, so many industries, but the ones that, I really like healthcare, see a bright future there, manufacturing, there's always a need there. Agriculture is another area. And you would think like farming, right?
Right.
Animals, like how does
Plants,
technology
corn.
come into play there, right? But
Right.
there's there's a huge need for technology there, and there's a huge need for transformation. And there's a lot of agriculture companies that are actually doing a lot of things from a technology front. And you would think of them as like legacy, but they have projects that are going on that are transformational. That would be exciting to, someone coming into the technology field. So I mean, there's so many directions.
Oh yeah.
And with technology, I mean, this, Dr. Wolf, there's, people always think like, oh, IT, Geek Squad, right? Or you're going to fix my computer, or you're a developer, right? But there's so many areas. Like you could specialize and be a database person. You could now specialize in AI, machine learning. You could, specialize in infrastructure. You could specialize in security. There's technology, and then there's different kind of paths that you can go inside of technology. And it just kind of depends on what's interesting to you, right? That's why it's good to explore while you're in school, and continue to just explore.
Absolutely. You brought up one, I don't know if we talked about utilities, right? But we talk about,
another one.
We look at the legacy utilities that we have, and I don't mean it in a besmirching way, of course, right? But you think of some of the things that move a lot slower, and for good reason. You don't want your nuclear power plants, pivoting every time there's a patch or the wind blows, so to speak, right? However, I don't know if you saw this in the paper, but North Minneapolis is going to get the first energy-focused project over on the north side. It's through renewable energy, and I forget, it's part of a workforce development thing, but the Met Council approved like a $1.6 million deal, or a grant, or a loan. So the Minnesota STEM Partnership will be teaching some of those basics things, STEM over there. But they're going to be bringing solar, they're going to bring water management, you're going to bring some green spaces, and how you do this in a condensed place. Because, just like we learned with COVID, not to keep dwelling on it, but we're in the middle of it, that is our health, that's our life. But that's a airborne, or however it's transmitted. But what happens if your energy source goes down? How do you live without electricity?
Right.
So, or, how do you live without fresh air, fresh water? And so those industries, I think civil engineering, as well as other areas, these traditionally, like civil engineering, they had the hard hat and shovel stereotype, right? You just go out and you dig ditches, but no, you need satellite data, you need GPS data, you need water erosion data, you need time elapse data over all these same things. You got to correlate. It's pretty big stuff, right? So yeah, in a lot of industries.
Yeah, and speaking of that, like another area that folks don't think of as innovative with technology is government. Right? But
trust me, yeah.
Government, I mean, I think I was actually at a DevOps days a couple of years ago or something, and there was a guy that came from the White House to give a presentation, and he gave some examples and use cases of what they're doing, and some of the technologists they have there. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff they're doing. You think about having to develop something and then put it on portable servers and drop it into a conflict zone, right? To support some mission or some humanitarian efforts. And sometimes you could be a technologist and help do some good like that. I know the state of Minnesota. Shout out to the folks at the state of Minnesota Technology Department. I know they're doing stuff. They're transforming, right? They're catching up with some cutting edge stuff in technology. So I mean, you could really go in any direction. And speaking, tying back to what you talked about with the projects and the stuff they're doing in North Minneapolis, those sort of things are needed in other parts of the world too, like solar power and water and things like that. So, technology is a global thing.
Mm.
And here's a sobering thing as well, kind of a sobering fact. And this is important to students, and I think important for students to understand and know right away. Technology it's a global market. It's a global space. So when you talk about competing for these jobs and competing for, these roles at different companies, we are competing on a global scale. So the job that you might do, someone in Russia or, someone in Africa, like emerging markets, there's people doing technology there too, and they're ramping up fast. So it's critical for us, especially students, to take advantage of the opportunities that we have. The coding classes, working with folks like yourself, Dr. Wolf, and working with organizations like the BDPA, and ramp up on that stuff, because you're competing in a global market. And that brings up another point too, like if you want to do stuff internationally, right? Technology can bring you to other places. It's brought me to Europe. And it's brought me to places I never thought I would go.
Mm-hmm.
And I've met people and made friends all over the world. I have friends from Australia to Denmark to Sweden to, I know people in China and Brazil, like, and there's work in these places, right? So if you want to go there and see the world and do work anywhere, technology can do that.
So you're telling me there is hope for us non-nerdy people, right? That want to get into tech. You could take skills and passions, and you could even travel the world on technology, or a technology career. That's awesome.
Yeah, and that's a good point too. Like if you don't want to dive super deep into the nerdy part of tech,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of jobs and roles, and there's different ways to support technology. Like you could be a business analyst, you could be a project manager,
Mm-hmm.
you can, you will have to know some things about the tech, but you may not have to know, like, you may not have to spend like hours and hours coding something out, right? Or configuring something on cloud, but you need to know how to communicate well. You need to know how to run a project, communicate with people in technology, communicate with leadership, communicate with the business. You can be a product manager. There's so many different areas that you could go in, and things you could do in the tech space, even if you're not like a hardcore nerd.
Sure. So that's actually pretty cool. I know we reached the top of the hour because my smart home lights went off in my office. I haven't gone back to change the schedule. I'm sure everybody be laughing when they see the lights went off and came back on. But Lindsay, before we go any further, I know we've had some questions coming into the chat room. If I could redirect to you for a quick second, any particular questions from the audience that we've gotten?
Yeah, so we have a few questions here. The first is, what kind of degree can a student pursue to get a job similar to yours?
Computer science. My degree is a bachelor's in information technology. That's what I actually have. I will say this, like, a degree is a door opener. You need to take it a level past the degree, right? Kind of speaking to my path, I started in IT in my senior year of high school, started working with computers and technology, got into networking, wanted to go down that path even farther, kept going down that road, and I just started gaining certifications. And I was a generalist for a long time, and a generalist in the Microsoft technology space. I did do some Linux stuff early on, and I've done Linux stuff throughout my career, and I've always kept that there because I've always just liked Linux. But most of my jobs have been, and most of my roles have been with companies that have mostly Microsoft technology. So I really was a generalist in the Microsoft space, and then started to gain certifications. And then I took a step back and said, okay, you know, to reach another level, you need to specialize. And the way that I realized that is I started to look at other people that were successful in my space and started to analyze and just kind of look at how did they become successful? What was their journey? And realize that, you know, specializing will take you to that next level. So I started to specialize. And what I mean by that is I started doing labs on my own. So getting technology and learning on my own, whether that was open source or resources that Microsoft had, and then going after the certifications. So putting in the work, and you get out of, you know, like school, jobs, anything you're doing, you'll get out of it what you put into it, right? So I started to specialize, and became a person that focused on management of the data center, right? But doing that around Microsoft's tool set, and just have continued to transform and dabble in technology as it's emerging throughout the years. So even when I was doing the management of the data center, I was doing some cloud back in like 2008, 2009, started working with AWS right away. You know, it wasn't even a core part of my job, but I knew this was a thing that would be on the horizon at some point. So I dabbled in it at the same time that I was getting my stuff done that I needed to take care of. And that really helped me throughout. And the other thing that is key is in technology, you will always be learning. So if you don't like to learn, you know, you might want to go do something like accounting. And that, you know, that's not a hit at accounting or other fields, but you might want to look at something where you don't have to learn as much, because you will be learning. And so it's good to form study habits that work for you, because a lot of the learning you'll have to do will be on your own. Long response to that question, but I'll turn it back to you, Lindsay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, we have a couple more questions. One other question is, are there any specific tools, processes, or resources that you recommend for young students to learn or follow based on the new technology capabilities, for example, API-led connectivity and or integration specifics?
That's a very specific question. So if it's, you know, if you want to work with API integrations, I'd say go out to one of the clouds. I'm going to recommend Azure. They have like student accounts where you can get, you know, free credits. There's also free services that are free forever that you can leverage. And you can start to work with APIs there. I would also get into DevOps. There's books you can read. There's a lot of resources out there. And then, you know, one thing I mentioned was like Scratch. There's code.org. There's like Code Academy. A lot of these tools, just understanding the fundamentals of development will help. If you want to focus on some of the infrastructure side of things, ITIL is still relevant. So study ITIL. That'll give you a good background, foundations of what goes into IT. And I know a lot of people think of ITIL as legacy, but a lot of those things still apply. You can take what's in ITIL and apply it towards cloud, and even some of those things overlay DevOps. And ITIL is going through a transformation itself as well to modernize to fit, you know, like DevOps and cloud and some of these fast moving technologies that we have now. So those are just a few resources that might help that person.
Great. Okay, and one last question. When I graduate, should I learn coding, hardware/infrastructure, cybersecurity, or data science?
All of it. No, in all seriousness, I would say explore. So like for myself, I got a bachelor's degree in information technology. I was very focused on like networking in the administrative side of things and got experience in hardware, when in reality I should have baked in more learning around coding, because the world we live in today is all about coding. Now, if we flip that on its head and you're someone that knows coding, and you're working in cloud, networking is absolutely critical to cloud. Security is absolutely critical to cloud. If all you know is development and you're working in cloud, like in a role like mine, you're going to be lost when we get into the discussions around networking and how we're routing traffic, right? And even in development, if you're doing like a microservices based application, and this is diving into the weeds, getting kind of nerdy here, but you'll have something called like a service mesh, right, where we're securing traffic and communications between all of the different components in our microservices based application. So there, you need to understand networking. So I'd say, the recommendation I give is go in with a generalist mindset. And there's foundational things that I think everyone needs to know in technology, at least at a base level, and then specialize from there.
All right. Great questions, great responses, Steve. Any other questions, Lindsay, we got?
No, that was it for the questions.
All right. So Steve, before we wrap up, on behalf of Power Up IT, it's a high school program focused predominantly on, it started originally as students of color in urban high schools, but we're looking at branching out statewide. So I wanted to point out how relevant your topic was about agriculture, how relevant it was about construction and other industries. And so we're hoping to bring those specialists, those experts to rural and farm America, as well as the Northeast and the Southwest, Southeast areas as we branch out. And so we might have to speak to your wife about coming out to talk about construction and how the use of technology has impacted her work. So we might hit the whole Buchanan family here before the end of things. So Steve,
Okay.
before we do wrap up, do you have any parting words for our audience? And then we'll end on that.
I just want to say, like, if you're tuned into this, you're taking the right step in a good direction, right? And following people like Dr. Wolf, I know you're doing a ton of stuff for the youth out there, and I love what you're doing. See it all the time. Just latch on to people like Dr. Wolf and the programs that he has, things like BDPA. There's a lot of resources out there for you to jump into technology. And it's networking. A degree is critical, and learning and knowing the technology, but I'd say networking is like, it's going to take you to that next level. So everything else, degree and everything else, is like 20% of your success, right? Success factor. 80% is networking.
Couldn't end on a better note. Steve, on behalf of Power Up IT, Minnesota STEM Partnership, all of our sponsors, Minnesota State IT Center of Excellence, and everybody else helping us produce these things. And Lindsay, thank you for being a great co-host. I'm looking forward to your degree in artificial intelligence and all cognitive learning, all that advanced stuff that you're doing. So have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully you've been able to benefit from this, and we look forward to seeing you every Tuesday and Thursday through May 2002. And then we'll do watch parties through the summer, repeating these sessions through the week. Take care and have a wonderful day. We'll see you all again very soon. Bye-bye. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.